Hello and welcome to our podcast. My name is Ken Wood. My co host is Brad Burnham, and this is Umbilical Corduroy.
I think I kind of like the idea of a podcast for casuals, right? Because it indicates no matter what you are currently talking about, right? No matter what subject you're on, um, this is not a professional podcast,
Yeah,
right?
indeed.
And it is not specifically not for serious people.
Indeed. Um, Although I think one of the reasons why I
I didn't say we
have
couldn't
always,
discuss serious subjects. I'm just saying.
one of the reasons, another of the reasons that I've always wanted to do this, other than the ones we've talked about, is because I feel, especially with Doug, dude,
Mm-hmm.
Doug comes off as such a fucking tool on social media, dude. He comes off as like
Yeah.
such a tool. But when you talk to him, like, dude, we'll drive around in his car and talk. We'll go hiking and talk. And like when you hear him, like he's such a reasonable guy. Like, and he's smart, and he says things that you agree with. And then like you can have a conversation with him for hours, and then like I'll come home and like I'll go onto Facebook and see something that he's posting, and I'll be like, what a fucking idiot. Like, so, and I mean, if Doug can be that way, like I can't even imagine. Like I edit myself heavily on social media. I always have.
Yeah,
Um,
that is why you will not find many if any posts from me on social media in any capacity because for one, text is not the place where you can immediately discern sarcasm. I
right.
tend to be a guy
Very
that
sarcastic.
that uses sarcasm generally and when you're not sure whether the guy's being sarcastic or whether he really means what he's saying, that is not a platform for me.
Right. So yeah, and I too recently, like over the last couple of years, I've stepped way back from using social media. But even when I was using it, I was editing. Man, I would write out so much text and type, delete the whole
Yeah,
thing over and over and
reword
over.
reword whole sections. Yeah,
Yeah, and then I would retype it, and I would spend 1 hour just trying to make one post, and then I would just at the end I'd be like, this isn't worth it, and just delete it all and walk
right.
away. And like,
Yeah, and then you're like, wow, what have I just spent time doing?
yeah,
Wow, that's a bunch of crap.
and like, and the frustrating thing is, I know this. Like, I know how social media is. I know how talking to somebody with text on just without tone of voice and everything else. I know how it goes, but I still fall into the trap, man. Like I know Doug's a reasonable guy, for example. I talk to him all the time and have great conversations with him.
And yet,
And yet, when I read his stuff on Facebook, I still am like,
even you want to argue with him.
yeah, I'm like, what a douchebag! I have to take this fucker down, And so
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
like,
There are times I have winced in response to reading one of his posts, and I'll tell you of recent vintage, I have not read one of his, any of his posts because like anytime I see a fucking a post from him, one, it's always a block of text, and I'm like, ah, shit. And then
hmm
and then there's like the read more, or see more, tag, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to click that.
it's not worth it. Not worth it.
It's this is a rabbit hole I do not need to run down.
Right, right. And that's what I've learned. Like, it's like, I mean, nobody really knows you on social media, and they think
Oh sure, yeah, yeah.
they read a paragraph or two here and there, and they think all of a sudden they have deep insight into your frickin' history and they know everything about you. And it's like,
Yeah,
I don't know any of them. Nobody knows me, and it's not worth getting into frickin' arguments with people. Yet that's all like Facebook. That's all it is, man. It's just people
yeah.
arguing with each other, and I don't want to get into that. Like, I don't. I'm cool going to social media if it's like, hey, let's all frickin' trade flowers and hugs and shit. Like, I'll join in on that, but like I don't want to get in and argue with people. Like, that's what a waste of time because it's all artificial. It's not real. You know what I mean?
Right. That I think is an excellent point. It is not real, and the artificiality of it comes from a level of anonymity that that no matter how many real names you use, right? Still you're not face to face with the person. You're not talking to the person. You're not even on the
It,
phone with them.
it's hard
Um,
enough to know the people that you know, that you have
right?
in your,
Yeah,
that you love, and you keep in your, your family members, your close
absolutely.
friends. It's hard enough to know them and communicate with them. How the fuck do you expect to know and communicate with people that you've never met before, that you
Wait.
only get a communicate through text? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, I mean, there is an argument to be made for that. There's an argument to be made, I think, for the fact that the written word carries a level of honesty and integrity that is not always lived up to, right? On social media, if you read Voltaire or you read, uh, you know, Chomsky or you read fucking uh, Plato or any important piece of text, right? Uh, you know, what you find there, right, is something that someone has created with intent and with purpose and has been uh, at least at minimum edited to a certain extent and has been put into the world with an understanding of the value that it can sort of inherently acquire by being printed and disseminated. Okay.
okay, sure. And I'm
On
not saying that you shouldn't read books or
no,
whatever.
I'm right, but is in social media, right? The text that is put out there is of a level that is not that it just doesn't reach that, right? But
Eh,
people assign that kind of value often to it,
oh, yeah, that's
right?
absolutely true. And here's the thing:
And that's that I think is a huge problem.
the names that you just mentioned, what do those people all have in common? Basically, they're masters of their craft, right? And what do most people
Right.
have in common that are on frickin' social media? They
They
are
are
not
not.
masters of anything. Most people are not masters of anything.
I, I can agree with you there. We all have our own foibles. Many of those people that I mentioned, and any number of others, you know, that are lessers in the field, still, you know, there's a number of steps that take place prior to that text being published and being put out into the world for other people to read. My wife is an English professor, and she sort of ascribes to the belief that artist intent, okay, artist being the person that creates whatever content, right?
Of course.
Be it a book or whatever. Artist intent uh, is only so important or as important until it leaves the artist's hands, right? And then so you can read into a text or treatise or whatever, and it can change. The meaning of it can change over time, right?
I
But
absolutely agree with that.
yeah, and so it is the reader which gives it
Meaning.
which gives it meaning, right?
Yeah, it's
Or at
all
least meaning to them,
the eye of the beholder. It's the artist can intend whatever the artist wants,
right?
but it's up to
Artist
the
intent is only
audience.
worth so much, right?
It's up to the audience to interpret it and decide this is what it means, and to each audience member it could mean something different.
And depending on the time period, things can really change.
Absolutely.
But I had a problem with that for a long time because I'm just like, look, like the artist that produces this this work, right? His intent, his meaning, is all that is important, right? Your interpretation of it is secondary. Okay, that was my argument for a long time. Because I thought you cannot belittle the artist or belittle the writer or belittle the creator of this by reading into it with a smaller mind, with an intent soaked in the time from which the artist was not present. Okay. However, my perspective on that has changed quite a bit in that I believe that the works that have come from the past that have been done by any number of artists or writers or painters or whatever can mean something in the current time period because they are interpreted by people living in that time period, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
So I mean, I've dealt with this for a long time. I feel, because I started drawing when I was 9. I started writing when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Always been a creative person. I feel, and I've created a lot of things. And every time I've created something, like I'll create it with whatever meaning or whatever's driving me. I'll create it. I'll create something, but then when I put it out there, it's out there, and have no control over it. Then it's its own thing. You know what I mean? And
And even you, the creator of said object, right? Within the time period that you live, those objects that you've created may mean something else, even to you,
oh, absolutely, yeah.
when
Yeah,
when
I
you
mean,
revisit them later.
yeah,
If you revisit them later.
there's poems
Which,
that
yeah.
when I first started writing, I've gone back to recently, and I'm like, oh man, these are totally different. You know, yeah, absolutely, because as people, we're always freaking growing, we're always changing.
Yeah.
Um, we're always evolving, we're always maturing, and so yeah, when you create something, a week pass, a year pass, 10 years, 20, 30, 40 years pass, you go back, you look at it different, or you look at it differently for sure.
And if it's of value, you can reinterpret that object, whatever it happens to be, that content, differently, and in more important or less important, you know, a meaning that is more important or less important, or in a different
Absolutely.
meaning, you can, and especially as the person who created the content itself, you can look back at it and kind of read into what's there, and then recontextualize it based on your later experiences.
Yeah, knowing what it meant
And
to me at the time
right,
versus what does it mean to me now, and
right, and what
who am
what
I
it
now?
may have meant to you without your knowledge at the time. Additionally, right?
Right.
Because you are you, and you created it, and you know what
That's
thoughts you're having.
that's one of the fun things in creating things for me is wondering what others will experience when they experience
Absolutely.
your
I
creations.
think
Like,
I think you're right. I
like
think that's of incredible value to people who create content of more recent vintage, right? In the last like 150 years, right? Versus people who created content in the past. Talking about like older writers like Thomas Paine, or the founders of the U.S. And their writings. Or even older stuff, by Shakespeare or whoever wrote Shakespeare stuff, and there is an amount of time that was required for that information to disseminate to the outside world that we no longer require now,
right,
right?
yeah,
You can put something out and get an almost immediate feedback from not just your friends or people you know, but also from the society at large.
yeah, from just random strangers or, yeah, but I mean, you still see that old school mentality. Like, I mean, this whole
Oh yeah.
argument with frickin' with movies being art, and the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe isn't considered art by who is it, Stanley
Oh sure.
Kubrick or whoever. Like that whole
That
argument.
was Francis Ford Coppola, I think. Or
Yeah,
no,
you know
was
what
it Coppola or not Coppola? Shit, Scorsese.
Scorsese, yeah.
Yeah.
And Scorsese had his defenders, and then you had people arguing both ways, and it's like, look,
Yeah.
douchebag, freaking art is art. It means something different to everyone. You know what I mean? What you consider art,
Art.
and what I consider art, and what everyone else considers art, we all have our own interpretation of it.
Now
So
that's a very open perspective on it. Okay, but there is I think a certain value to an older school interpretation of art and what its boundaries are, right? So you've had a lot of people over a lot of years who talk about art versus like high art versus what
kitsch,
is content for the masses. Okay,
yeah, kitsch or low art, yeah.
right. And so do you apply the same sort of rigorous study to both if you do you find one of them lacking? Things like that. Um,
I honestly don't find any value in the argument. To me, I whatever I experience in my life that has meaning to me is what I want to dive deeper into. And sometimes that would be considered high art, and sometimes that would be considered low art.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, like I just remember frickin' um, back when I was in school, we had a teacher who was playing us like Synecdoche of New York, and
Oh,
all these
Schenectady. Yeah. Hmm.
all these other movies, and he was friends with the director, and he was trying to get us so involved on discovering what the director's intent was for the meaning of this and the meaning of that, and it was like, who
It's like art.
gives a
It's
shit?
artist
Like,
intent. Yeah.
it's more important to get our perspectives, not who gives a shit what the director's perspective was. To
I don't
me,
know. I don't know that I find that to be a totally valid statement. I think the director's intent or the artist's intent, right, is valid, right? But
it
it's
is.
valid in the same context that the listener or the viewers interpretation of that art is also valid, right? So um, you know, just because okay, let's take Orson Scott Card. Okay, Orson Scott Card is sort of notorious for his uh, his views on gay marriage
Gay people
and all that kind of stuff, right?
yeah,
Um, but his books are considered, some classics of science fiction literature, right?
oh yeah, I've had people frickin' tear into me on social media
Oh yeah,
for saying I like that Ender's Game is one of my favorite books. You know what I mean?
right.
I've had people come at me, and I'm like, look, I know the guy's a douchebag, but I read this when I was a kid, a long time before I knew he was a douchebag. Okay, it was
And
recommended to me, and I like a book. It is what it is.
even so much
Um,
as reading it or internalizing the art prior to your knowledge of the artist's douchebaggery, right?
right.
Um, the separation of art from the artist, I think, um, is an important consideration and is of value. Now,
I agree
there,
with that, but I mean, to me, it's like, and I always grew up, hearing people talk about, like, for me, I grew up with actors. People would talk about actors. Oh, that actor is scuzzy. Oh, that actor is this way. I don't want to see
right?
their movies. And it's like, you don't know this person. Like, you're just you're basing this off of frickin' um, magazine covers you see at
Okay.
frickin'
Oh, sure, yeah.
supermarkets or whatever. You know what I mean? Obviously in this day and age we have a lot more access to information, and Orson Scott Card
Mm-hmm.
is a douchebag. And for each, and I agree with you. Like, we all have demons in our frickin' closets. We all have things that we've done that if everyone knew about, everyone would hate everyone. Um, but that being said, like, there is a line, obviously. Like, if you found out a person was a freaking child molester, you probably would be like, okay, I'm not going to read their books anymore. I'm not going to freaking give them any
Yeah,
more business.
nobody
You know what I
collects
mean?
nobody collects Hitler's art, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So,
So there's a line, and you just every one of us has to make that decision. Where's that line for us? You know what I mean?
well, that's a good point, and I want to. So that leads into something like let's say something recent, right? Bill Cosby, right?
Oh
So
yes,
Bill Cosby is known and convicted. As far as I know, I'm pretty sure he's convicted.
he is.
Yeah, okay. So of some pretty heinous fucking shit, right?
Oh yeah,
You know,
raping multiple women, like tons of
right?
them.
Exactly. But his comedy albums, right, have been the inspiration for I don't know any number, like literally, I think you could choose any number of really funny and brilliant comedians.
Tons of people.
Over
Yeah.
the years
Dave
that
Chappelle
are not douchebags. Okay, as
Dave
far as I
Chappelle
know,
was talking
right?
about this recently, which I guess a lot
Yeah,
of people consider Dave Chappelle a douchebag now. But anyways, he was talking about that
I
recently.
like I like Dave Chappelle. Even with the recent release
Everything that's
of
going on.
8 minutes 46 seconds. Thank you, George Floyd. Okay,
Oh.
so yeah, so George Floyd was held down for 8 minutes 46 seconds.
Right.
And his he was not allowed to breathe and died. And there have been a lot of well, I mean, there's just been a lot of riots and everything, dealing with that, because because of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you had seen the recent Dave Chappelle 8 minutes 46 seconds.
I have not
Sorry,
seen.
8 minutes 46 seconds.
The last one I think I saw was I know it was before the George Floyd incident.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and just as an aside here, so Dave Chappelle, who I truly believe is a fucking brilliant comedian, that guy's a goddamn genius. Okay, and I'll go on the record, even if he ends up, like being a fucking horrific monster, like as a comedian, he's a genius. Okay, but I don't think he's going to be a horrific monster. But he had a recent piece of content put out called 8 minutes 46 seconds. And it was supposed to be, at least I thought it was like supposed to be a comedy show, right? And it starts out, he makes a couple jokes, and this is after the quarantine, right? So everybody's in masks, they're all outside, and so it was like it's the first comedy special that I've seen recorded since the quarantine, right? I do recommend taking a look at it if you haven't seen it.
it's on Netflix.
It is on YouTube, as far as I know.
Okay.
So you can take a look there. But it ends up as a conversation or monologue about George Floyd and the black struggle in America, and Dave Chappelle's response to it, as well as his interpretation of a lot of different things that happened because of it, and his conversations with others, in his personal circle, a little bit about the George Floyd incident and the other things that surround it. It is not a funny video, right? It is not a comedy show, but it is something that I am absolutely certain is probably going to be the impetus for a number of people who dislike Dave Chappelle to be mad at him, right?
Well, I mean, that's one thing that I've always liked about Dave Chappelle, going back to his TV show, that he would do these great, just amazing comedy things, but then they would always have like a serious
they'd always have a message,
or like he would go back to his little monologue that he would do in between skits or whatever, and sometimes he would just do a little bit of stand-up, but other times he would give you this really serious speech. And if you look at his comedy specials on Netflix and stuff, it's a lot of that. It's like he'll joke around for a few minutes, and then he'll get into some really serious stuff for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And I've always appreciated that about him. And I haven't heard this, but I mean, I know going back even before that, he was in some hot water for making comments about trans people and a bunch of other stuff.
There was some serious issues, with that, and with some of his comments about gay people, or LGBTQ community people, and a lot of his so like everyone, I think on Earth, perspectives change, right?
Yeah.
Opinions change, and that's the most valuable thing that you can have, right? Is somebody who can change their opinions, right? Who isn't stuck in cement on something. It's like if you're truly committed to an idea, and it helps to define you as a person, then obviously waffling on that is something that is not desirable, right? It's like,
sure.
Okay, so I mean, I'm not going to say that like the guy who's in cement about white power shouldn't change his views. I'm just saying, like, if you're committed to an ideal, right, and that can change in the wind, then obviously you weren't committed to that ideal. But general opinions about things in the world, can, I think, be changed often in a much less serious way, right? And those jokes or comments that Dave Chappelle had made about transgender people, or LGBT community people.
I think it was just transgender people.
Was it just transgender?
I believe
was that
so.
right?
Because I don't remember him making any jokes about.
I don't either. I don't either. But you're right. I do remember that the transgender joke issue, I'm not of the opinion that anything is wrong with um, you know being transgender or bi or gay or queer or non-gender binary, or anything like that. So, um, I don't really remember what it was that he had said, but yeah, that I think is, I mean, it's obviously less of an issue than something like even uh, who was it, Louis C.K. Had happen, right? Because obviously, there were some serious, allegations, regarding Louis C.K.
Oh yeah.
that made the rounds, and he is currently, like, as far as I know, unable to get a gig. Kind of, I'm not. It's not that bad. I know he's doing, some gigs here and there, but Dave Chappelle still
he disappeared
occupies
for a little while, and
Yeah.
then and now he's back doing some stuff, but it's under the radar a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
I think, yeah. I mean, there's value in talking about that later too. But you were saying about Dave Chappelle, and beyond the issues that he had about whatever comments that he had made about transgender people. Um, yeah, his
His
comedy and his shows, generally had
a serious
a
message.
sort of
But
yeah, right.
yeah, no, we were talking about Bill Cosby and his message about Bill
That's right, yeah.
Cosby
Oh,
growing up worshiping the guy, and it's like now he's this horrible monster, and what do? He's this is an idol
yeah,
of his that he's had since he was a kid, and he's got this conflict inside, and I mean, he's talking about the comments he made about transgender people. It's kind of the same thing, because the comments that he made, I don't remember them all, but I remember at one point he talks about how growing up as a black person, dealing with racism, and all the prejudices, and seeing how quickly transgenders have been accepted over the recent years, and how everything just seemed to flip over the recent years. Like that didn't happen for black people. I mean, they're still dealing with the struggles with George Floyd, um,
yeah.
and going back to slavery and everything, and so whatever you want to say about him, I can at least understand where he's coming from. Like
Right.
I'm not black, or I'm not a minority. I can't sympathize with him, but at least I can hear him
Well,
and
you can.
understand what he's saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can empathize, but yeah, there's at a certain level, there is no ability, for a person who has experienced, um, the amount of white privilege, I suppose, that we have, that can understand the level of, you know, issues, I guess you could say, that a black person has, in society, even today, when we are at a point where we feel as if we are, much more enlightened than we have been, ever before, or whatever. It's like, oh well, we elected a black president, so now we're post-racial, and that is of course, pretty much
If only
BS.
if only that were true, but yeah, no, yeah.
Right? Yeah, it'd be great if it were true,
Right.
but unfortunately, it doesn't just work like that. A switch does not just flip. And even with transgender, okay, so you talk about, like Dave Chappelle's comments about transgender people and their place in society and their ability, or the luck that they have had in getting, you know, acceptance in society that seems to have happened in a much more accelerated rate, than black people.
Right.
And as a person who is not transgender, I'm not sure that Dave Chappelle can understand, what they go through on a daily basis, even after, many of these quote advancements, have been made
Absolutely
in society.
true. Absolutely true.
And so,
yeah,
I think part of his comments, may come from just, a place where somebody who is white, might be talking about, black culture, would be in the same place, right? Because he's just
a place
not
of privilege.
right. Yeah,
He's
yeah, yeah,
not.
exactly.
He's not
In a place of
transgender.
privilege, he does not experience that type of bias and that type of discrimination, even though he does experience or may experience at some level, because obviously he's a much wealthier person and in a different uh, social status than your average black person on the street. Um,
Yeah, but that doesn't.
I'm not saying he doesn't experience racism. I'm saying that even though he is a rich guy, or whatever, like I don't understand the amount of discrimination that he experiences because I'm not black. I'm a white guy. But in the same sense, Dave Chappelle doesn't know
What a transgender
what a
person goes through.
transgender person goes through. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah. He's
And
privileged in that way. That
that's a hard thing to take in. It's a hard thing to internalize, and it's a hard thing to get over because
absolutely.
there's a general push towards equality that I think is of incredible value in society, right? But there is also an impossibility of equating experience, right? Where I don't know what someone else goes through because I'm not them. I can extrapolate from my own experiences, but I cannot genuinely know. And so, because of that, I come from a place of privilege in relation to that other person, essentially, in that I do not know what they go through, except that my place of privilege as a white male is often far better than a place of privilege. Like say if you're talking about the general, like a person of color versus a transgender person versus LGBT or lesbian, gay, bisexual person, because they don't because they are not the same, right? They're the discrimination that each person experiences based on their inherent personhood, right? Whether it be, that you're gay, that you're black, that you're another, Mexican, Asian, transgender, queer, uh, non-binary, trans, like I don't even know what. There are so many types of people, right? I don't want to name
uh,
them all because putting
LGBTQIP2SAA. That's all the initials. I
really,
believe. I believe.
really,
Yep.
that's
I
interesting.
I usually just call it LGBTQ plus.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, yeah. Look at that. LGBTQIA PK. What's PK?
I don't know. I've got
Oh, what do you know?
LGBTQIP2SAA.
Okay, so there are a number of, I guess LGBT plus is one of the more accepted
I,
versions of it, right?
I just call it LGBTQ plus.
Okay, that's perfectly fine.
LGBTQ questionable,
Yeah,
and then plus.
LGBTQIA is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, pansexual, polyamorous, and kink, which is the K at the end. There are bonus terms,
Okay.
but
Asexual,
including gender identity and gender expression, and those I think are,
androgynous.
those I think are key as well. So you have okay, I don't know what CIS is. Cis?
Cis, yeah.
What is that?
That's you and me or cis.
Okay, cool. That's it's kind of what I thought, but I wasn't entirely certain. So, yeah, gender identity is I think a really important thing to include, right? Other than say okay, so you've got your LGBTQIA, and then I guess PA, which is the intersex, asexual, pansexual, polyamorous, right? But that doesn't include gender identity or gender expression, right? And those I think are important because you can be like you don't necessarily need to identify as as a particular gender, right? If you don't feel as if that applies to you, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's what the second Q stands for, questioning, or
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
believe it's
Because
also fluid,
this list.
gender
Oh, yeah,
fluid,
fluid. There you go, fluid. Yes, thank you. Gender fluid, right?
which I believe is under questioning. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think we're still at a time where these terms are coming into standardization, right?
Hmm.
Um, so uh, I think LGBT plus is currently, and I mean currently, the the accepted umbrella term, right?
I think. Well, no, I think it's LGBTQ plus.
Is it? You think
Yeah,
so?
I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
All right. Yeah, because I'm looking around and I'm finding more of the LGBT plus because I think they kind of umbrella the QIA and fluid and all the rest of the stuff under like the plus, right?
Because
I don't know. I don't,
LGBTQ
was the acronym? Yes,
yeah,
you're right.
and
Absolutely.
so yeah, and then they added
Yeah.
they added all all the other.
Well, yeah, and they continue to add. And I think that's a value. I don't know. I mean, so I think what we're getting to, right, is a society that does not desire to box people in and yet still needs to do so. Right? You see what I mean? Like the
I do.
acronym
I think
LGBTQ plus, and so on and so forth. It's like, it wants like a society that desires to be inclusive, but still requires like exclusive terms in order for it to function in its current incarnation. You know what I mean?
I do. I absolutely know what you mean because I actually get I get a lot of crap online, especially for telling people that I hate labels. I freaking hate labels. People will like attack me for it and be like, "Oh, well, that's easy for you to say, with all your privilege."
As a cis male, yeah, right.
Yeah, as somebody who's had to fight for my identity and stuff, and I'm like,
right.
Well, I hate labels because I've had to fight for my identity my whole life too. Like I grew up, and people would look at me and be like, "Oh, you look this way, so we expect this of you. You're a big guy. We expect you to be a football player. You're this. We expect this." And like,
right.
I'm not. I'm a freaking cuddly artist and shit.
It is important, and I think it is critical to understand that does not equal
absolutely
the
not.
other.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like my fight to express myself in a way that I want to express myself is not the same as their fight as someone else's fight.
Their plight,
for
identity,
for general rights for for the rights that I take for granted. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like I don't like labels because they confine people. I understand the need for labels,
and that's just
to define, to define people rather than confine them, right?
Absolutely. And then like on top of what you were just saying, like I used to know a person who would just talk about gay rights or for example the gay pride parade and how they just wish that no cis people were allowed to it, and I was always like, that seems weird to me. Like, it seems like you want to include cis people. Just
you're right. That does seem really weird to me. I understand. I think, like the genesis of that opinion, in that they don't like they have spent or they spend all of their time being relegated to a lower niche of society by those people, right? The cis, the your non-gay, non-lesbian, like standard. I hate to use standard, but like straight society,
cis,
right?
Cis,
and so it's a place. These these riots, these rallies, these happenings, are a place to untether from that
Yeah, well, I mean,
from
it's
that
like
relationship. You know, I understand that, but
it's like safe zones at schools and stuff
sure.
like that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when I first hear about safe zones, when I first heard of this opinion of, oh, cis people shouldn't be allowed at gay pride parade festivals and things like that, at first I was just kind of like taken aback and like, oh, I don't know if that's right. But then when you hear people talk about, oh, this is why, and I mean, I talked to this person about it for a long time, and
Mhm.
this person made me understand their side of it and their feelings, and I was like, oh, that totally makes sense. I get, that you'd want to have a place for, just
Where you don't
where,
have to worry about
right,
the opinion of others and the the non-intentional oppression, I guess you could even call it.
right,
You
yeah.
know,
I mean,
like, yeah,
the things that I don't have to worry about every day when I am
right,
doing
yeah,
whatever, you have your place where you can feel that way,
yeah,
and I get that, and um, I mean, I support that. Like, I don't know if every gay pride parade needs to be that way. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm not, I'm not gay.
yeah.
I'm
Well,
not.
I
I
think
don't even
you
know
got
if I
I think you
deserve
got
to
a
have.
good point there.
I don't even know if I deserve to have a say in it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I
Oh yeah,
totally,
yeah.
I totally support it. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing with safe spaces. Once you hear people who have needed a safe space explain it, it's like, oh, I get that. Like shit. Like I would be kind of heartless to be like, oh, well, fuck you. You can't have a place like that. You know what I mean? Like,
Right, or to intrude upon that place, when you were not invited or when you were not allowed, and I'm not saying that like you weren't allowed in safe spaces, but but a place like that, where say you were not, welcome to be, and then to intrude upon that place, essentially, denies its validity as a safe space, right?
right.
Um,
And that's talking about. I mean, that's the last thing I would want to do anyways. Is invade,
right.
intrude in a place that I'm not wanted. It's like if I'm not
It
wanted,
can it can
why
make
would I
you
want to
feel
be
bad.
there? Yeah, like yeah, have your place, do your thing, be
Yeah.
you. Like dude, that's fine. And like I said, I have every day I have my place. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I don't have to worry
Right.
about that shit
It's
all the time. So it's
every month
cool.
is White History Month.
Right, right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
But no, I think beyond that, it can feel bad. Okay, anytime a person is denied entry or allowed to be somewhere or to attend something, right? That that they otherwise say might want to attend or just or just to be denied access to it feels bad or can feel bad. Often I understand
Absolutely, yeah.
that
To be
it's
told
like
to be told you're intruding, it's like, oh, I don't want to be told that, but
right,
but
and you can feel very much like I am not intruding. I want to be included in this because I support you or because my beliefs align with yours.
right.
However, even if that is the case,
The best way you
it
could be supportive is to by taking yourself out of the situation.
yeah, I mean or to be supportive in another way or in
Yeah,
another place or in another time,
yeah,
because because the whole idea is if you if you support the ideas that are espoused by be- by the people that are participating in this thing you cannot participate in, then or that you are not invited to participate in, then that is part of the ideals that you are supporting.
right, that's part of it. You're
Yeah.
not supporting them if you say, oh well, I'm not going to support you if I'm not included. Well, then you're not
Right,
supporting
right,
them in the beginning.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like if you insist on being included in this, even though they say, what, we we do not want you to be here right now with us here, you know, then then you're not listening. You're not,
right,
you don't understand their needs. And in
right,
that case, then you are actively working against the wishes of those you wish to support, and that is,
right,
and it can hurt. It can feel fucking terrible, on your side. You know what I mean?
right,
You know,
right.
it can feel really bad. But what you have to understand is,
That's what they feel every day.
life
Anyways.
is life.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
that too. Yeah, yeah. Life isn't freaking fair, anyways. To
Right.
begin with.
Life doesn't give you any fucking guarantees, man, and it definitely has never said that it was fair or or even, you know.
Yeah.
But just because that happens doesn't mean that they don't want your support in another way and are not happy to have it.
But that feeling of,
You know?
oh, am I gonna, oh, I'm intruding. That feeling that I'm being told I'm intruding. Like, I mean, you have to understand if you're like a gay person, for example, how often do they have that feeling? How often do they
Right.
go to a
Oh
place
yeah.
where they feel that way? You know what
Oh
I
yeah.
mean?
How
So,
how 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 often are there uh the just the rights that you understand at a basic level, right, are yours, right? That you experience every day, that you experience the benefits of every day, are they denied,
right,
right? And so that engenders a feeling of unsafe, of not being not only not being wanted at a place, or specifically, being excluded, but also, of feeling insecure,
right,
like, even, in your own body on a daily basis, like, in any place you go, because at any time, somebody who disagrees with the way that you live your life because of who you are could put you in danger,
right. And
in
you're in constant
yeah,
stress, constant anxiety, just walking
right,
around in your own
right,
skin. Yeah,
yep,
yep,
yeah, and no one should have to feel that way, right?
right,
No, like, nobody
right,
should have to feel that way. If somebody's actions, um, determine that person is a bad person, right? If they kill somebody, whatever, like, that's their actions. That is how they act. That is what they do.
right,
That is not what they are,
right.
right? What they are should not put them into a place where their rights are violated, without, with impunity, right? What they
To be honest,
do may need to do that, right? It's like, if you break the law, right? Okay, but that's an action, right?
right.
But just being something, being black, being gay, being something, um, you know, should never ever put you into a place where you feel as if, something could happen to you, that denies your rights, and that you could be put in jail for being gay or black, or that you could be accosted on the street by a police officer for no other reason than your skin color,
Right,
um,
right.
that you could be beaten, and
Which I've, by the way, like I've had that happen to me. Like I've had plenty of situations where I've freaking had a police officer pull me over and question me, and at the end I'm like, hey, why did you pull me over? And they freaking lie and make up reasons that aren't
sure,
true, and
yeah.
like
I mean, if
we probably all had
if
it
they're
happen to us.
they
Um,
yes, yeah,
but
but
I couldn't imagine living with that stress every second, wondering, hey, is it going
right.
to happen every moment? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like if I'm driving a shit car, right, and I have a bunch of bumper stickers that say "fuck the police" on it, and I'm dressed, like, all punked out, or whatever, or I'm walking down the street, and I've got a fucking mohawk, and a jeans jacket with a bunch of fucking, like, punk, bullshit on it, and a nose ring or whatever, and a cop pulls me over because of how I look. That's one thing, okay? That shouldn't happen, but I can go and fucking put on a suit and take out my nose ring, you
Right.
know, and that doesn't need to happen. Those are clothes. That is the image that I'm presenting to the world. You know, a black person can't put on a set of clothes and then and change, their skin tone, right?
Right. And that is the end of our show. I'm Ken Wood. My co-host is Brad Burnham, and we are Umbilical Corduroy.